Welcome to another episode of Becca's Talking, where every Tuesday at 10 a.m. we release a new podcast of interesting people to talk to. Everybody has a story to tell, and this is going to be a great story. I'm looking forward to this. But before we get to why this man is here and what he does, I want to talk about my friends at Havana Garage. Havana Garage, sponsor of the podcast, Chaz and the staff there. It's just a great place to go. And you say, well, I don't smoke cigars. You don't have to smoke a cigar to enjoy Havana Garage. On the other hand, you might say, well, I don't drink. Well, if you enjoy a cigar, Havana Garage is a great place for you there, too. Havana Garage in the Old Market. They've got a wonderful humidor. They've got a great selection of whiskeys and mixed drinks and craft cocktails and an atmosphere like the old Rat Pack boys, right? You got Dean, you got Sammy, you got Peter Lawford, Joey Bishop, and, of course, that chairman of the board, old Blue Eyes himself in there. So go and enjoy yourself. If you've got an event going on at the CHI Center or the Holland or the Orpheum or just a nice dinner in the Old Market, stop by the Havana Garage. All right. We're going to start off with a question here for you. What do Julio Iglesias, Godsmack, Missy Elliott, Lauryn Hill, Steve Miller Band, Beyonce, Lone Star, Toby Keith, and Alanis Morissette all have in common? This man, Kent Hertz, from Malvern, Iowa.
Yep.
But you're never there. You're on the road now.
I'm on the road a lot. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, why is he connected to all these people? Kent is an audio engineer, a music producer, a videographer, and a projection mapping artist. Now, I know what an audio engineer is, a music producer, and a videographer. What is a projection mapping artist?
So projection mapping is when you augment reality with projection. So a lot of times it's with sculptures or like buildings where you can manipulate the fronts of buildings with projected light, and augment reality. And so for live shows, Alanis Morissette in particular, we have these giant fabric pieces that come down halfway through the stage, and those are all projected onto and stuff. And
now, okay, so born and raised in Malvern, Iowa, you've got a studio now in Malvern, Iowa. You do a lot of work. How does a farm boy in Malvern, Iowa end up touring the world with someone like Alanis Morissette?
I knew from like a very young age what I wanted to do, and knew unfortunately I'd have to leave Iowa to do it. So I went to Nashville right out of college and went through engineering school and music school and started working in studios there. And that was the late 90s, and just built up my client base. And then from Nashville, I went to Miami and worked as a staff engineer at the Hit Factory, and then went to work for Julio Iglesias and ran his studio in the Dominican Republic. And then I connected with the Godsmack guys, that band, and they moved me to...
that just seems like, if you said, I was with Julio Iglesias, and then I wound up with Willie Nelson, or I wound up with Shakira, I might understand that sort of a connection. How do you go from Julio Iglesias to Godsmack?
To Godsmack. Well, it was all that studio, so it's a big studio, the Hit Factory down there. So we had 6 rooms, and so it was all kinds of music all the time, and Godsmack had just decided to do their latest album down there. And so I worked on that album. We hit it off really well, and Sully bought a studio in Los Angeles and wanted me to run it, and so I moved to Los Angeles, and I was there for 16 years, ran that studio, and then worked on a Steve Miller Live from Chicago DVD, and then hit it off with Steve, and I've been his studio engineer for 20 years now.
When you say that you ran a studio, what does that mean?
So I was a studio manager. I was the chief engineer, technical engineer. I managed the whole thing.
So for people that don't know, like they'd have, like you said, 6 studios or so. So you might have a rock band in this studio and a country band over there, and maybe classical over there, or whatever. Maybe somebody over there is recording a commercial, a jingle or something like that for a commercial. So it's a little bit of everything, and you're just making sure that all the studio equipment is working and everybody's taken care of. And
yep, all the gear is working. We have staff assistants and staff engineers. Everybody's assigned to a different session, and just make sure everything runs smoothly. And
you say you knew at an early age that that's what you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. as I look back on what I was interested in as a kid, you know, it made sense that I'm doing this sort of a thing.
Right.
But I didn't know that I wanted to be an interviewer, right? And I didn't think I could be a disc jockey because, you know, guys with a voice like this couldn't be a disc jockey, right? Guys with a voice like yours could be a disc jockey.
You've got a face for radio.
I know, yeah, I know. And a voice for the newspaper. But at the same time, you know, I mean, I didn't know I know I sort of wanted to do something like this, but I didn't know where that would take me or how it would all play out. Did you know that you wanted to be like producing albums and you were producing records? Did you know from the very beginning as a child that you wanted to do that sort of a thing?
For as long as I could remember, I knew I wanted to be in the music business. Obviously, like I wanted to be an artist, but I knew that wasn't me. Mm-hmm. I was always very technical, and I always loved recording studios. And yeah, I think I was 15 years old. I bought my first like 4-track multicam or multi-channel recorder, and you know, it's not really a thing back here. And then especially 30 years ago, nobody knew what that was. Yeah. And so I knew I had to leave, and you know, that's why I went to Nashville and all the kind of music hubs. But no, I always knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a producer and make music and work in studios.
I tried messing with some of that stuff. You know, in college, I did some recording when I was over at KVNO. We recorded some live bands and stuff, and I realized that that's a real art form. I mean, you say you wanted to be an artist. To be able to produce music and do what you do, that's a real art form. I mean, that's not easy.
No, it's not. And I mean, I've been fortunate enough to work with the biggest producers and artists in the world, and that's where I learned from. Mm-hmm. And the guy I studied under Andy Johns. So the Johns family, Glenn Johns, his brother, did all the Beatles stuff, and Andy did all the Rolling Stones stuff, all the Led Zeppelin stuff, and he recorded Stairway to Heaven, you know?
Yeah.
And when we got the studio in California, I built the studio to his specs, and he was our resident producer. And so I was assistant under him for years, trained under him.
Now, I've known you for a while, you know, just on a superficial level, but, you know, I just hello, yep. And, you know, have conversations and that. But when you're working with somebody like Glenn Johns, somebody, you know, really big-name producer, what type of personality gets into this? I mean, you're a real nice guy, you know. Are they all kind of like that, or is I think of like Phil Spector, who is just a nut job, or, you know, George Martin, that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different personalities. I feel like the most successful producers are the producers that are a little more laid back and know how to motivate their artists without like screaming at them, and just, you know, there's no need for that. We're making music. We're not sending people to Mars. Like, come on, you know. But there's definitely guys like that.
Are you a musician also?
I am. So I play drums, play piano, guitar.
Yeah. Do you ever sit in them with people that you're recording, or just?
Not so much people I record with. I have a big network of session musicians, you know, and so if the project calls for drums, then I'll send them to Ron Wixow, who's the drummer for Steve Miller Band, who lives in Red Oak.
Well,
of all places.
The other Iowa boy drummer, J.R. Robinson.
Yeah.
Who has been played with Quincy Jones. We are the world. I mean, this guy's world famous drummer, and he's out of a small town in Iowa too.
Yeah.
What is it with you Iowa boys and drums?
I don't know.
So you know that you want to do something like this, and you just go knocking on doors then and say, "Hey, I want to do this. Let me sweep around the studio and learn the ropes." How do you get into actually really get to a level, you know, or at least on your way to a level that you're at now?
You have to work your way up. So the school I went to in Nashville was School of Audio Engineering, and they had an intern program, and I went to work as an intern at Emerald and Masterphonics Studio, which at that time we had 12 studios and 5 buildings. It was a huge, huge operation. And I worked my way up from, unpaid assistant to, taking out the trash and getting the food orders to nighttime phone operator to staff assistant, and then just worked my way up.
Kind of same thing with starting off in radio with me.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing. It's like, just give me every crap job you got, and I'll just hang around long enough till you have to hire me.
And a lot of it is like all these studios have big name talent, right? It's like when I started, it was like Shania Twain and the Dixie Chicks were doing their album, and Rascal Flatts. So the studios have to be real careful of like who they let into the buildings, so they don't freak out and become fans and harass the artist. Like, that's very unprofessional. And so there's a vetting process that takes place to make sure that, all right, this kid isn't gonna get starstruck. And
was everything when you started? By this time, everything was digital, right? I mean, did you do a lot of analog work?
We were still working on tape, so it was Pro Tools was pretty new, and we were still working on analog 24-track and then Dash 48 digital machines. I remember we got our first Pro Tools rig, and people were mostly using it for editing and like vocal tuning and stuff. But no, it was still very, very analog and old school way of recording.
So then you had to learn and grow as it became digital and computers and now AI and you have to keep on growing with the industry.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, when you started, you had to be in a studio to do this.
Yeah.
Now, anybody with a smartphone can be a producer.
Yeah. That's crazy.
How do you compete with that? Or in other words, is there still a market for guys like you, or is that going away as everybody goes to
it's
TikTok
going
videos
away,
and
but
stuff? Yeah,
it's going away, and it will go away, especially with AI. But most of my clients are old school. Steve, this is he's been making music for 50 years now, and so we still record, like, everything's analog, and we do takes with the whole band, stuff like that. A lot of my clients, like, the other thing with the internet, a lot of my clients I never meet. They send me tracks, I mix them and I send them back, or I master them and send them back, which is great because I don't have to travel as much. But you just have to adapt or die. Like, you just have to keep adapting.
Well, the same thing. Hey, there was no podcasting when I started.
Yeah,
the same
exactly.
Thing, there was no satellite radio, no streaming. Hell, we were playing. I'm so old. We were playing, records on AM radio.
Right.
So you're right. You have to adapt or die. So now you've adapted and you're surviving. You're on the road now this summer with Alanis Morissette.
Yep.
That's different than when you're in the studio producing an album or something.
It is.
What are you doing when you're on the road?
So on the road for Alanis, I am the playback technician and I'm a keyboard tech. So the keyboard tech is I take care of the keyboard player and make sure all of his gear works and all that stuff. The playback tech, I work with the director and Alanis to design the show, basically, and then I program everything into cues, and then I sit side stage and fire cues, fire playback. And so that playback can either, in our case, we don't have a whole lot of audio playback. Like, it's all her. We don't have like recorded vocals or anything. So most of our show, I'm either cueing set changes or lights, or a lot of it's the video stuff.
Okay, so and I'm
it's almost like a theater show.
Yeah, I'm sort of a geek when it comes to this sort of stuff. I love going to a show and just observing the behind the scenes people, what you can see in that, because that's a show in and of itself.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. When you say you're just at the side there doing all the cues and everything, but you're doing double duty because you're also the keyboard guy.
Yep.
I know that there's also guitar techs and there's drum techs and everything. Are they all doing double duty too, or?
The guitar techs are. They're usually taking care of a couple people. The Atlantis tour, it's not a huge tour, but it's pretty big. So we travel with our own video crew and director and, lighting designer, front of house engineer, monitor engineer, and then assistants for all those guys. It's probably 30 people maybe. We have 6 buses of crew.
So you do the whole sleep on a bus thing, going from town to town deal?
Yep.
So, but like you're going to South America, right? In March.
Yep.
You're going to be in South America. So do you haul all the equipment down there, or do you like rent it all when you get down there, or how does that?
The guitars and stuff we take. As far as keyboards, the only thing that we're probably going to take, we still have a big Hammond B3 organ that we haul everywhere. And it's been, teched out and modified and stuff. And that's the one thing that, especially in South America, is pretty hard to find that's actually working. So we're going to end up taking the B3. But a lot of the other stuff is backline rental.
For people that don't know, the B3, that's a monster. I mean, that is not an easy piece of equipment to haul around.
No.
Yeah. I mean, there are some local bands. Blue House comes to mind, where they use a B3. You know, and it's a great sounding keyboard.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine being in a band and hauling that thing from bar to bar.
No, that's a good 400 pounds probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but nothing sounds like it. I mean, they have, there's all kinds of keyboards now that emulate the sound, but it's especially for Michael, who's the keyboard player, it's just a very distinctive sound, especially that B3. Like, they all have different sounds, and that one is really growly, and it's a very distinguishable sound that's also on all of her albums.
Now, I know that, just everyday people in the workplace, working in the office, whatever, work around people that maybe they don't care for that much. But it's, you go in the office, hi, how you doing? Good to see you, have a nice weekend, get a cup of coffee, and you go into your work. But if you're traveling with these people for months at a time, you don't have that luxury. I mean, you're on the bus with them, you're sleeping in the bus with them, you're there on the stage, you don't know anybody else in town, so you're your own family. Does that cause any problems?
I mean, it does
not
at
necessarily
times,
with Atlantis, but I mean, just in general, have you had problems like that in the past?
Yeah, I mean, you run into it, and generally those people get replaced. Is what happens. Like, if everybody's complaining about them, then they're usually the problem. But it's interesting touring. Like last year, we were out for 3 months, which was the longest tour I'd been on, like consistently, no breaks whatsoever. But it's so interesting because you meet all these new faces and people that you're living with, for 3 months and working with, and you just become like this team, this tribe, and it's people you'll know for the rest of your life. It's really cool.
Yeah, I know that. I spent 5 years on the road doing stand-up comedy, and it was the same thing. Only I was a one-man band, but you'd work with a person for a week, and that'd be your best friend for the week.
Yeah.
You'd hang out, go to the mall together, go to a movie maybe, or whatever. You'd have dinner, but then they'd go to their next gig, go to your next gig, and maybe you'd meet somewhere else down the road somewhere. It sounds like a glamorous life, and when you're a kid, that's what you want to do. It seems like a glamorous life. I mean, you're a kid in Malvern, Iowa, thinking, boy, I want to, be in show business.
Right.
But it's not all that glamorous, is it?
No, it's not. It looks glamorous. Yeah. No, it's a lot of work, man. It's crazy hours, and especially for your crew. Like our call time's at 8 a.m. and we work till 2 or 3 in the morning. Get back on the bus, wake up at the next venue, and do the whole thing over. Like it's fun. I mean, you see a lot, but yeah, it's exhausting.
Do you get to see a lot?
You do. Depends on the tour. Usually you have like a show, a day off, and then a show, or a couple days off. But South America is going to be nonstop, so there's not going to be a whole lot of sleeping for 2 weeks.
I mean, I'm sort of amazed that Alanis Morissette has a following in South America.
It's huge. The last show we did was 50,000 people. It was sold out.
You're kidding.
Oh.
I mean, no offense, she doesn't
No, I
get
get
anywhere near, nowhere near that here in America, does she?
I mean, she's still relevant. We saw it every show in America too, but
Yeah.
they were all shed shows. You know, even the arena stuff we did, she was selling out. But
What's a shed show? What is that?
the venues that are outdoors, like West Fair,
Okay.
they call them sheds, but usually Live Nation owns most of those venues,
Right.
and those are like 15 to 20,000
Well, that's
people
something.
capacity.
That's something too that I don't think people understand when you have an act like an Alanis Morissette or Steve Miller or whoever it might be, in that you've got these big companies, Live Nation being one of the biggest. What's the other one that's out of Kansas? They run the arena in Kansas City. Anyway, I know there's a few others that own the venues or run the venues. They have the contract, and that. There's politics in a lot of this, isn't there? As far as what bands get to go where and what arenas they can play.
There are.
Yeah.
And I don't know a lot of those politics, but yes, there are.
You don't have to deal with
politics.
any of that stuff, huh?
No.
No.
Not at all.
No. Okay, so where do you go from here? Oh, but hold that question. Hold that question, because we talk about AI and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the changing environment. I want to find out what the future holds for the record industry in general. Not just what you do, but I want to once again remind people that we are sponsored by the fine folks at Havana Garage. Havana Garage in the Old Market, where you can go and just relax, have a nice cocktail, some good conversation, and hang out with friends or meet some new ones. Enjoy a cigar and just appreciate the beauty that is the Old Market. I love the Old Market. I love Omaha. So check out Havana Garage. They're on the Old Market.
It's a great place.
It is. It really is. Yeah. I enjoy it. Okay, so where is the music industry going now?
It's a great question.
Yeah. Does anybody know?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. AI is crazy, and it's just moving exponentially. I mean, even just the last year, especially with music, like. It's so much easier for an artist to produce and record their own album and distribute it now than it ever has been. You don't need $1 million studios and stuff. And that's more just the digital side. The AI side, like you can put a couple prompts in and the AI will write the whole thing. You can throw that into another AI that will write the whole song and give you back the music with somebody else's voice. Like, it's crazy.
I know there was some controversy. The Beatles just won their latest Grammy with the song Now and Then, which they used AI for John's voice and George's guitar. And that was controversial to a lot of people. It's like, no, that's not really recording.
Yeah, I think what they were using, though, is more forensic AI, like the tools you use to clean up tracks, opposed to like duplicating somebody's vocal and recreating it. So I know it's AI, but it's not. It's still them.
Yeah.
It just kind of got blown out of proportion.
Geez, no, nothing ever gets blown out of
Yeah,
proportion on the
weird.
internet. No,
Oh my God, AI.
not at all. You talked about that, and I actually did a podcast that's up and running with an expert on AI that we talked about, and you say they didn't use it to generate the voice of that. There's a commercial that they play during Nebraska volleyball games, football games, and that, where how they run the ads for just the universities, right?
Yeah.
And the ad is voiced by Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if that's just an old recording that they had that they put over the video, or if that's AI.
They probably modeled it with AI. It's real easy to do.
Yeah, and it sounds just like Johnny.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know if anybody under the age of 40.
Right. Johnny who?
Johnny who? Yeah. But at the same time, you listen to that and it's like, okay, is this real or not? And that's part of where this is going, isn't it?
And it's pretty new. This is all that just happened in the last year with the voice stuff. Like, this is brand new and it's working that well.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it with deep fake and everything else, like, it's hard to know what's real and what's not anymore.
Can an artist make a living? They can't make a living on record sales alone anymore, can they? Generally speaking. I mean, maybe
yeah,
a Taylor Swift,
Taylor
maybe,
Swift,
yeah.
somebody that's selling. I don't know. Nobody buys music anymore, and that happened with Napster, back in the '90s, and basically what happens, like the music industry, instead of getting behind digital file sharing, and being like, all right, this is the future, let's embrace it, they tried to fight it and lost horribly, and that destroyed the whole industry basically. Yeah. And it's never come back from that. So now it's gone full 360 back to live shows. That's where artists make all their albums or make all their money now. And that's why you have these huge productions like Taylor Swift that are, multi-million-dollar shows. They're selling out, but that's how they're making their money.
But even bands now that may not have that big name recognition that everybody knows, they can have a really solid following from some TikTok videos and some YouTube videos that are out there, and make a nice living on the road, going from town to town, playing venues of maybe 3,000, 5,000 people or something like that. And there are bands out there that can make string these together and make a pretty nice living.
Yeah, I mean, it's still possible, but if you're just relying on album sales alone,
no,
it's not going to do it.
No.
So you got to have your social media in order, and thousands of viewers and subscribers and stuff. And the biggest thing for bands to do is to get out and do shows. Do as many shows as possible.
Yeah, get out there and sell the swag afterwards.
Yeah.
And
And vinyl. Actually, vinyl is the biggest seller.
What? How does vinyl make a resurgence? And what brought that on?
I think what happened was, we grew up like everybody had vinyl, everybody had albums. It was like a physical collection that when people came over, you could see it and like, oh, go through your albums. And then it got all digital, and it's like iTunes. What are you going to do? Just look through my iTunes? And so then people started getting back into vinyl. So it's like, here's my physical collection. Now you can look at it. Yeah. I think that's what happened. And I mean, it's a novelty thing, but I mean, it's cool just having a vinyl album and putting it on the record player and this analog thing play.
I used to have about 700 albums, and I just got tired of moving them around.
Right. Yeah.
Digital came, and I said, "Oh yeah," I downloaded a bunch of stuff, and and now I wish I had those albums again.
Yeah, exactly.
But because vinyl does have a different feel to it, a different sound to it than you get off of CDs or streaming services. Okay, so when you're not on the road with Alanis Morissette or Steve Miller or whatever, like you said, you got a studio in Malvern, Iowa.
Yep.
What do you do there? I mean, do big name acts come out to Malvern, Iowa to record with you?
No, I mean, not yet. But I mean, my studio is basically for remote production, so I'll bands will find me online and they've either recorded their album somewhere else and they'll send it to me to mix and master, or they'll hire me to produce their album, and we'll just go back and forth remotely. And I work on it in my studio. We remote in either video or just on the phone and work that way.
There's a pretty cool documentary, I think it might be Netflix or one of the streaming services, on Chicago, and how Chicago survived the COVID lockdown. And they wound up doing recording where everybody's in like a different city.
Yeah.
And they're all recording, and it's all going, and they put out a Christmas album.
Yep.
Basically just with, everybody not even being in the same room or in the same city, let alone.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And which, of course, is something that I guess it's a good thing, right? I mean, it's another option.
It's another option. It's nice to be able to, if you can remotely see each other and everybody plays live at the same time, that's really cool. What it normally is somebody will do the demo of the song, and then they'll send it to the drummer. The drummer will do the track, send it back, send it to the bass player. He does the track, send it back. The problem with doing it that way is you lose all the energy from the band, so it gets really dry and quantized.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to get the feeling back.
Well, and no offense to what you do, but part of that is also, don't you think, recording has become as much, if not more, of a producer's art form than it is a musician's art form. I mean, if you take a look at the old, in my opinion, if you take a look at the old, like 50s and 60s bands where they'd all be in the studio together and they'd be playing. Now you look at some of these albums and some of the songs, and they're so very well produced and they sound great and everything, but you might miss some of the energy that you might have had, let's say, like in a Chuck Berry song, or early Beatles or something, where even if there was a bad note or something in there, they kept it in just because the energy was there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the hardest part of recording isn't getting good sounds; it's getting the energy from the band. It's like capturing that take from the band, and so I still do everything live with the band.
Yeah.
We have a full band. Yeah.
Because I mean, I guess I look at like Peter Frampton, I guess, would be an example, where he really hit big with the live album because that energy was there, which was missing on some of the just recorded stuff.
Yeah.
Recorded was a little bit more sterile.
Yeah. That's pretty common, man. I mean, that happens.
Yeah. Okay, so good luck to you on the tour, man.
Thank you.
I mean, I a couple of things. I always admire somebody that says, as a kid, I had this dream, and I went and I followed it. I've interviewed a number of people like that. We had Clay Anderson, the astronaut, did a podcast with him. Carolyn Snell, who's Brandy Carlisle's manager now, same sort of thing. People like that just had a dream as a kid and said, "This is what I'm going to do," and they make it happen. I'm a sucker for a story like that. So I love hearing that. You just knew you wanted to do something like this.
Yeah.
What? Before I let you go, what did your parents say? I mean, when you said, "I'm going to go and I'm going to go be an engineer, a recording engineer,"
they weren't real receptive to it at that time because they didn't really understand what that meant, and so to them that was just going out on the road and doing a lot of drugs, and like they just didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't understand the studio part of it, and so I had to promise them that I wouldn't grow my hair out, I wouldn't do drugs, and I wouldn't get tattoos. And I don't have any tattoos. So
you finally got a haircut. So,
I finally got a haircut. But no, it wasn't until they came to Nashville and got into the big studio, like, oh, this is.
It's a real job.
This is a real job, right?
Yeah. Well, that is. I mean, because it's not an easy life.
No.
And your parents wanted you to have an easy life.
Yeah.
But my parents were the same way when I decided to go on the road to do stand-up.
Right.
And the first time my mom saw me do it was an open mic night where I just bombed. I mean, it was awful. And so for like the first 2 years I went and was doing it professionally, she wouldn't really talk to me. I'd call, "Hi, Mom. Oh, hi, Tom. Hey, here's your father." Because she just was because she thought I was just really sucking, what I was doing. And then she saw me one night at a comedy club with a full house, and I killed. And then after that, it was like, my boy, the comedian.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it was a whole different thing.
Always believed in you.
Thank you, my friend. It was always a pleasure talking
Tom.
to you. Be safe on the road. One more thing here. You talked about your parents said they didn't want you on the road doing all the drugs and stuff like that.
Right.
From what I can tell, it's too much of a business now. The days of the Motley Crues and just bands getting completely.
I mean, I'm sure some of the younger tours do that stuff, but no, like our tours they're like military precision, and you can't.
It's
you
a
can't
real
screw
job.
around, man. Yeah. And it's the hours are long, and like you have to be there. The show goes on, so there's no messing around. You'll get cut.
And plus, after a while, that gets old too.
Yeah, exactly.
You can only do the sex, drugs, and rock and roll for so long.
Right.
Anyway, Ken Hertz from Malvern, Iowa. You can go and I imagine if people go and we're in a album record store and see an album that you were involved with, your names on the liner notes and stuff like that. That's got to be a rush the first time you see that.
Yeah, absolutely was.
Yeah.
I think Lone Star was my first credit.
A
big Lone Star album. Yeah. I just remember seeing that. I was like, wow, that's cool.
It was like, "Hey, Mom, look at this now."
Yeah.
Look at this now. Thanks a lot. Hey, don't forget, like the Becca's Talking Facebook page and like that and follow us. Here's some behind-the-scenes stuff and a little bit of information about some of the things that we're doing. Plus, stop by Havana Garage and tell them you heard about it on the Becca's Talking Facebook page. Tell them that I sent you. And have a good time. Spread the word. Till next time, take care and bye, y'all.